on Memo, 8 a.m. Chew on the developing stories as they unfold on Midday Report, 1 p.m. Get a quick bite of this generation's hot takes on different issues. Unpopular Opinion, 5 p.m. Serving you the best info daily. BNC, the Billionario News Channel.
Stay informed when it matters most, from breaking stories and other developments that shape your day. Midday Report delivers clear, concise, and credible news right when you need it.
Join Mai Rodriguez as she brings you the headlines, insights, and updates that keep you ahead.
Monday to Friday, 1 p.m., only here on BNC.
With all the national issues going on, from impeachment to the flood control controversy, how do we separate fact from fiction? Good morning, I'm Attorney Karen Jimenez, and this is At the Forefront. As major national issues dominate the headlines, from the impeachment proceedings against Vice President Sara to the controversies surrounding the flood control probe, Filipinos are flooded with information, opinions, and claims. But how much of this is legally sound? We cut through the noise and turn to a legal practitioner who has made it his mission to bring the law closer to the people. Our guest today has 3 decades of legal practice. He created the Pinoy Street Lawyer in 2011 as an online public service platform that provides legal advocacy and educational discourse for the marginalized. Today, we'll ask the Pinoy Street Lawyer about some of the most pressing legal issues, among them the impeachment proceedings against Vice President Sara and the flood control probe. Let's welcome Attorney DJ Jimenez. Good morning, Attorney DJ.
Good morning, Ms. Karen. Thank you for having me here at the front for the first time.
Yes, oo, pero alam ko, suki ka lagi sa TV because ngayon nga naman na maraming mga national issues that have legal implications, ang sabi nga nila, dumami bigla ang mga
Experts and lawyers, or pseudo-lawyers.
Oh, yes. Kaya importante talaga makarinig tayo from a lawyer with decades of experience. Let's start with the impeachment proceedings. The House Justice Committee has already found probable cause to proceed with the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte. But there are still pending petitions in the Supreme Court. The first group of petitioners that include Attorney Israelita Torion, just recently also filed a supplemental petition. And the group has asked the Supreme Court to declare House Resolution number 892 unconstitutional for authorizing the House Justice Committee to continue the proceedings during the House recess from March. What is your take on this? Would there be a risk na biglang madesisyonan itong mga petitions na to?
For proper context, we have to consider that in matters in the determination whether an impeachable offense was committed, the House as the prosecutor reigns supreme. So any question on the wisdom of the House may constitute as what we term as a political question. And of course, without preempting what the Supreme Court will say, normally courts would shy away towards these issues. But if it is plainly on matters of constitutional provisions, procedure, then theoretically these are justiciable questions where courts are empowered, the Supreme Court particularly, to deal with. But of course, in the absence of any injunctive relief, tuloy lang. So I understand that there was no restraining order issued by the Supreme Court. So in law, tuloy lang yung proceedings.
Pero naging moot na ba yung mga pending petitions in the Supreme Court? Kasi some of them were petitions for prohibition.
Well, again, to my mind, and without preempting what the Supreme Court will say, if the subject matter is the House hearing and it is submitted to the plenary and the plenary takes action, then once the articles of impeachment is transmitted, in law, ang tawag dito, fait accompli. Kumbaga, there's nothing to be done dahil wala na yung hearing sa House eh. Nasa Senate na eh. So, to my mind, it possibly could be mooted by those supervening events.
What about potential grounds for grave abuse of discretion? Some of the petitions for certiorari and prohibition alleged that the House Justice Committee hearings were a mini trial in disguise and that they subpoenaed witnesses and evidence that were beyond the corners of the impeachment complaints that were originally filed. Would that give room for a potential finding of grave abuse of discretion?
This is what is rather interesting because as we have seen, you've seen in the Corona impeachment, these things happen during trial. But here, they made use kasi of the word mini trial, which is a misnomer eh. Kasi dapat they just stuck to seeking probable cause, no? Kaya lang ginamit
or clarificatory hearing.
Yes,
no?
or clarificatory hearing similar to what a prosecutor does, no? Kaya lang yung procedure, again, procedure na yan eh. So it is possible that the Supreme Court may clarify, but the problem here is the timing. When will the Supreme Court resolve this? Kasi if it is overtaken by events in the impeachment proceedings, baka magkakaroon ng legal issue doon kasi tapos na eh. So, but I think since it's a matter of procedure, it is very well within the Supreme Court to inquire. Kasi pwede rin sabihin ng Supreme Court, may grave abuse. Pwede rin sabihin ng Supreme Court, well, pursuant to our mandate for the House to be very careful in determining probable cause. Pwedeng sabihin, ginawa lang nila yung kanilang constitutional duty to determine probable cause in such a manner they deem necessary. So, hindi natin masabi. Pero as legally, kung pwede ba o hindi pwede, syempre, these are matters of procedure. So, this may not necessarily be a political question.
Oo. Kasi napansin ko, the Supreme Court does also consider yung providing guidelines in the future for future cases. Like, for example, the recent decision on what constitutes forthwith. They had an opportunity to clarify ano ba ang meaning ng forthwith when in fact they said that they could not compel the Senate
Mandamus
to act
is not a proper remedy.
Yes, so mandamus was
Yes.
not a proper remedy, but they treated the petition for mandamus as a certiorari petition and then found no grave abuse of discretion, but they took it as an opportunity to clarify what forthwith means. So in this case, they might, so do you agree na they might take it as an opportunity to provide guidelines as to how to conduct future House Justice Committee hearings in finding probable cause?
That's why it's very important to understand. No? In matters pertaining procedures that are taken into account during an impeachment trial, of course, the Senate acting as an impeachment court reigns supreme, just like the House in the determination of what it wants to file as an impeachable offense. But when it comes to matters pertaining to interpretation of the Constitution, the Supreme Court reigns supreme. And that is what they did in the Duterte impeachment case. And that is no different from what we have now. It's possible that the Supreme Court might discuss matters of procedure and grave abuse.
During the House Justice Committee hearings, when they were trying to find probable cause, details of bank accounts of Vice President Sara and her husband, Attorney Mans Carpio, were disclosed. Attorney Mans later filed criminal charges for violation of the bank secrecy law, among others. What is the effect kung magkaroon man ng finding doon sa charges that the Attorney Mans filed that they were in fact in violation of the bank secrecy law? What would be the effect of illegally obtained evidence in impeachment proceedings? At what point pwedeng yung question, yung admissibility ng mga evidence?
If I were the lawyer for Duterte or Sara Duterte, then I would have to object on the admissibility of these pieces of evidence. And the proper time to object, syempre, during the impeachment trial. And under
Senate na.
The Senate. And under the Senate rules, the presiding officer, the Senate President, decides on the admissibility of the evidence.
So this would not be the proper time na nasa House
Too
pa.
premature to question it.
Under the House Rules on Impeachment, after the House Justice Committee finds probable cause, it will submit its report with a resolution setting forth the articles of impeachment based on the evidence adduced before the committee. To what extent can the Justice Committee modify the original articles of impeachment that were filed before the House? But before you answer this question, we'll have to take a short break. At the Forefront, we'll be right back.
Every day, new stories are being served. The freshest takes. The stories that everyone's talking about. The Daily Dish makes sure you don't miss a thing.
Only here on the Billionaire News Channel.
Welcome back at the Forefront. We continue our conversation with Attorney DJ Jimenez. Attorney DJ, under the House Rules on Impeachment, after the House Justice Committee finds probable cause, it will submit with its report a resolution containing the articles of impeachment. To what extent can the House Justice Committee veer away or modify the original articles of impeachment that were filed before the House?
Well, theoretically, they should be limited to what has been filed. Because again, in the interest of due process, they cannot suddenly come up with a new charge. Precisely, this would, I think, be the legal question. That's why it has, what they did actually is the determination of evidentiary facts. And the evidentiary facts should be consistent with the ultimate facts that have been charged in the impeachment complaint. So, dapat hindi yun malayo. Otherwise, baka maging issue on due process yun. Parang iba
sa
yung
Supreme
chinarge.
Court na naman tatakbo pag
Exactly.
ganyan.
Hindi lang sa Supreme Court. It is even possible that when this reaches the Senate, since this is analogous to a criminal case, and in a criminal case, you have remedies in court, no? Pwedeng mag-file ng possibly motion to quash or whatever yung camp ng Sara Duterte. And again, if they have the majority in the Senate, medyo very interesting scenario.
Oo, very interesting nga.
Yes.
And speaking of the Senate, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano said that if the Duterte impeachment reaches the Senate acting as an impeachment court will follow all the rules and procedures. But part of the minority naman, si Senator Robin Padilla, said that the job of the opposition is to oppose, and that's what they will do. So, simulan natin with the statement of Senator Robin Padilla. Is it correct to say that we should expect the minority to oppose the impeachment as the minority?
Well, sana as senator judges, they should at least appear objective, di ba? So, but outrightly saying na we will oppose, parang for purposes of public service, it doesn't look good. But if they will focus on the objectivity, I mean, pwede naman yun. But again, sabi nga ng Supreme Court, it's both political and legal. So I think it's really very hard to take the political aspect of impeachment away.
Oo nga, mahirap. Kasi even with the corona impeachment, I do remember that even among the senator judges, parang from our point of view, merong mga naglo-lawyer against Chief Justice Corona, among the senator judges
even with the
itself.
quantum of evidence required. So if we recall yung quantum of evidence that the late Senator Miriam Defensor said, no, proof beyond reasonable doubt. Kasi nga, it talks about conviction eh. So, kaya magandang
And that is the
scenario.
question I have. You preempted my question.
Yeah.
So, we know that dun sa House Justice Committee, all they had to find was probable cause. Now that if we see this impeachment reaching the Senate as an impeachment court, what should be the quantum of proof?
The Senate has yet to amend the rules on impeachment. And per my last recollection, silent yung quantum of evidence. And generally, we have three, di ba? Substantial, and then proof beyond, preponderance of evidence, and then proof beyond reasonable doubt. It's really silent. But if we consider an impeachment complaint as analogous to a criminal offense, kasi it uses the term conviction.
Yeah, conviction.
And imagine,
and then one of the accessory penalties is perpetual disqualification.
At saka binoto ka ng madaming tao eh. So for the Senate to take that mandate away, it has to really be proof beyond reasonable doubt. But again, it's both political and legal. So probably politics will eventually reign.
Since pag-usapan na natin yung accessory penalty of perpetual disqualification, mainit na issue to because Vice President Sara Duterte already declared that she will be running for president in 2028. And of course, a lot of her supporters are saying that this whole impeachment is just to make sure that she's unable to run by 2028. Some members of the House, like Representative Joel Chua, said that regardless kung mag-resign si Vice President Sara, dapat ituloy pa rin ng impeachment court yung decision as to her disqualification. What is your legal take on this issue?
Well, that is a big legal question. And if we follow history in the case of Merceditas Gutierrez and Erap Estrada, hindi natapos yung impeachment eh. So, hindi naman
in the
nag-rule.
case of Merceditas Gutierrez as ombudsman, she resigned. So,
Exactly.
hindi na...
And it's an accessory penalty to the principal penalty of removal. So, legally speaking, without preempting how the Senate will act on any potential issue, parang mahirap to to proceed with the case na the impeachable officer is no longer an officer at all. So medyo it's a big question.
Okay, interesting. It will set a precedent that
Yes,
we haven't seen before in Philippine history. Senate President Pro Tempore Panfilo Lacson said that the Senate, sitting as an impeachment court, is a constitutional body co-equal to the Supreme Court, and its decision cannot be appealed even before the Supreme Court. Does this mean that Vice President Sara will not be able to challenge any decision of the impeachment court?
If it pertains to the principal penalty and if it pertains to the Senate acting as an impeachment court, I think so, because this is what we call in law as a political question. When matters pertain to the wisdom of a co-equal branch, the other branch cannot interfere unless there's grave abuse. But grave abuse is very difficult to establish.
Naalala ko kasi nung time ng Corona impeachment, about more than a year later, nung nagkaroon ng privileged speech si Senator Jinggoy Estrada and Senator Bong Revilla saying that the senator judges were given money in exchange for them to vote to convict. Merong mga lawyers in our team that spoke to the former Chief Justice Corona when he was still alive that you can have a mistrial declared. I remember Justice Cuevas was still alive that time and he also advised that. Pero ayaw nang lumaban ni Chief Justice Corona by then. Pero yung mga ganong instances, kung merong interference or allegations of bribery, direct or indirect, yan yung mga pwede pa bang mapunta sa Supreme Court?
Well, at least in theory, no? Again, if it violates the fundamental right to due process of law, I think it might be, at least in theory. Kasi na-violate na yung due process mo dun eh.
Let's talk about another hot issue, yung flood control scandal. Marami nga nagtatanong, wala na ba mangyayari dyan? Bakit daw ang tahimik? But the camp of former House Speaker Martin Romualdez wants to stop the Office of the Ombudsman from investigating his alleged role in this whole flood control controversy. And he cited bias as a ground to inhibit si Ombudsman Boying Remulla. What is your take on this? Can Ombudsman Boying Remulla be asked to inhibit himself from further investigating Congressman Martin Romualdez?
Well, at the onset, regardless whether you're the Speaker of the House or the Senate President or an ordinary individual, yung right to due process and impartiality in matters of investigation is inherent. No? So I don't see any wrong reason why the camp of Speaker Romualdez would not raise this. Kasi nga, he was branded, at least in social media, as the master plunderer. But then again, ang ombudsman kasi as an investigative body is supposed to be impartial. So siguro yung mga ganong pronouncement could be a basis, but at the end of the day, this is something that isn't new. If you plea for due process, rule of law, and proper investigation, ang gagawin lang naman yan, mag-inhibit si ombudsman as an ombudsman and i-deputize niya yung ibang tao para din wala nang masilip. No? Kasi, syempre, maganda pati yung issue rito kasi we've seen this before in the Enrile, Revilla, and Estrada plunder cases. Na-file, pero sa dulo parang nasayang lang eh. Diba? So, kailangan talaga yung investigation. Kung talagang may kickbacks na na-establish, talaga dapat yun na maimbestigahan. Pero kung ang naging issue lang is insertions alone may not necessarily amount to plunder. So, talagang kailangan to imbestigahan at dapat matibay yung ebidensya kasi sa dulo, ang matatalo rito is taong bayan. You just waste the people's money kung kagaya nung nangyari dun sa plunder cases. Na-dismiss lang.
Nung time ni Napoles.
Exactly,
No? But
no?
when I think about inhibition as a remedy, you mentioned pwede naman yan, pwedeng remedy yan with the ombudsman. But doon sa, kumabalik tayo doon sa, for example, House Justice Committee where they are technically acting as prosecutors trying to find probable cause. Pwede ba doon ang motion to inhibit? Because pag napansin natin, meron ngang parang meron ng conclusion yung ibang mga members ng House Justice Committee as to na meron ng probable cause against Vice President Sara. Would an inhibition also work?
In my experience as a trial practitioner, yung mga cases that are being filed at the prosecutor's office, the prosecutor has a twofold function. Hindi lang yan based sa kanilang mandate, kung hindi that's a universal right, no, na anybody subject of an investigation is entitled to the neutrality of an investigator. And yung prosecutor kasi, twofold ang purpose niyan, to ensure na kung inosente ka, hindi ka kakasuhan. Hindi porke kasi nagkaso sa prosecutor's office, may kaso na agad. But that analogy applies strictly in a prosecution arm. Now, yung House Committee kasi is both political and legal So, kaya ang hirap mo i-distinguish. But I think since it's an investigation by analogy, the same principle could probably be applied by analogy. But again, realistically, it could be ignored. And if ignored, wala ka namang remedy doon dahil constitutional mandate nila
So technically,
to conduct.
there's nothing stopping the
Yes.
respondent in this case to file motions to inhibit doon sa mga feeling nila bias. Pero
Yes.
maaring, or most likely, hindi rin papansinin.
In fact, they tried to get a TR from the Supreme Court and kita mo, hindi nga nag-issue ang Supreme Court. There was no compelling reason kasi that's part of their constitutional duty, I think.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Attorney DJ. Kulang na tayo sa time, but we hope to have you back again on other legal issues.
Thank you.
In an age where everyone has a platform and information travels faster than the truth, distinguishing fact from fiction has never been more critical. From impeachment proceedings to high-profile controversies, legal issues are now being debated not just in courts and Congress, but across social media, often without context and sometimes without accuracy. But the law is not a matter of opinion. It's grounded in rules, procedure, and evidence. And in times like these, Filipinos need more than viral posts and sound bites. They need clear, reliable, and responsible legal guidance. Be informed, be insightful of the news. I'm Attorney Karen Jimenez. Always stay at the forefront.
The Philippines is moving fast, and so are we. Billionario News Channel is now live on GSAT Channel 40, reaching a broader audience